A game-changing defensive trade could shake up the NFL this offseason. With one of the league's most dominant pass rushers likely leaving LA, there's a wild scenario that could bring an elite Cowboys defender to the Chargers. Along with this, a couple of good options are available for the Chargers too. Let's break it down. What's up, buddies? Welcome back. If you are new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We cover all AFC West news here on this channel. So the Chargers are stuck in, now something really interesting, Joey Bosa's situation. It looks like he's probably on his way out. The Chargers still have a major need at the defensive end, and here's where things get intriguing. There's a potential scenario where they could land Micah Parsons. Now, you might be wondering why this makes sense. Let me break it down. Parsons could be the perfect replacement for Bosa's role. You've got to consider the bigger picture here. Khalil Mack's future is also up in the air, with retirement questions lingering. What makes this particularly interesting is Parsons' current situation. He wasn't exactly thrilled about Mike McCarthy's departure, and he's entering the final year of his contract. This presents a unique opportunity for the Cowboys to potentially move him and get some valuable draft capital to kickstart their rebuild. The Cowboys are in a real financial bind here. They've got massive contracts with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, and that puts them in a tough spot when it comes to Parsons. Here's the interesting part about any potential trade. It's not just a one-year rental situation. Any team trading for Parsons would need to be ready to pay him, and pay him big. This is where the Chargers' situation gets really interesting. They're sitting pretty with their cap space situation, which makes this kind of move actually feasible. Let's be honest about the Bosa situation. The production just hasn't been there, plain and simple. There could potentially be a scenario where both players are involved in the trade, though obviously the Chargers would need to sweeten the deal significantly beyond just Bosa. Let's address something about Parsons that doesn't get talked about enough. There's some serious tension in Dallas right now. Just look at what's been happening. After a disappointing 7-10 season and missing the playoffs, things got heated. We're seeing public back and forth between current and former players about the team's culture, especially after Mike McCarthy's departure. What makes this particularly intriguing for the Chargers is the timing. You've got a star defensive player who's not afraid to speak his mind and who's clearly frustrated with the direction things are going in Dallas. Just recently, he got into this whole situation with a Cowboys legend about team culture and leadership. This kind of tension, combined with their cap situation, makes you wonder if the Cowboys might actually consider moving Parsons. For the Chargers, this could be the perfect storm. They've got the cap space, they need defensive firepower with Bosa likely leaving, and they could offer Parsons a fresh start in a stable environment. Now, let's talk about the interesting tight end position that we need to discuss. Everyone's buzzing about it, and for good reason. Let's talk about Mason Taylor, and here's something you might not know. He's actually the son of NFL legend Jason Taylor, that dominant defensive end. Now, while a lot of attention is going to the Penn State and Michigan tight ends, don't sleep on Taylor. Speaking of tight ends, this is where smart draft strategy comes into play. Last year, the Chargers showed some real savvy in their draft approach. Yes, a tight end is a pressing need, but here's the thing. Why not target one in the second or third round? Let me break this down for you. Looking at this draft class, we've got 4 really solid tight end prospects. Now, I'm looking at a detailed breakdown here, and while it might be information overload, the key points are clear. You've got Colston Loveland leading the pack, then there's Fannin Jr., Mason Taylor, and Tyler Warren. Here's what's crucial. Some of these talented guys are going to be available later in the draft. This is where good scouting absolutely makes the difference. When we look at how this could play out for the Chargers, especially at pick 22 in the first round, there's an interesting option in Berrien Brown, the corner out of Texas. I will explain later why I am picking him at pick 22. Now, looking at round 2, pick 55, there's Mason Taylor sitting right there. And here's something really interesting. The Chargers are prioritizing tight end before the receiver, which actually makes perfect sense. Let me tell you why. Greg Roman's system, now with Jim Harbaugh at the helm, doesn't put a huge premium on wide receivers. They've already got Johnston, but what they really need is more consistent production from the tight end position. Mason Taylor could be that game changer. He's not just your traditional tight end. We're talking about a versatile weapon who can line up anywhere on the field. Looking at his tape, and yes, even with some rough footage, what jumps out is his combination of size, strength, and receiving ability. Put a little more weight on his frame, and you've got something special. Let me tell you something from personal observation. A great tight end absolutely transforms an offense. I've seen it happen. Take the Lions, for example. They had some decent tight ends over the years, but when Sam Laporta came in, complete game changer. Here's why that matters. When you've got an elite tight end, defenses are constantly guessing. Every single play, they're thinking, is it a run? Is it a pass? Where's he lining up? That guy can go in motion, split out wide, and just create matchup nightmares. That's exactly what makes tight ends so valuable in today's NFL. Their versatility is just unmatched. Think about it. You can line them up as an H-back, split them wide, put them in the slot, use them in standard tight end sets, jumbo packages, even as a fullback. That's creating mismatches all over the field. Now let's talk about why going corner with that first pick makes so much sense. It's basic supply and demand, but people often miss this. Look at the numbers game in the NFL. Every year, we're seeing more and more elite receivers coming into the league. If you're a top athlete in high school or college these days, chances are you're playing receiver. So let me break this down with some rough math. And I'll be straight up, these aren't exact numbers, but they illustrate the point perfectly. Let's say you get about 10 elite receivers entering the league each year, but only maybe 6 shutdown corner. Right there, you've got a problem. You've got 4 receivers who potentially can't be matched up with elite coverage. That's why when you have a chance to grab a top-tier corner, you absolutely have to consider it. These guys are just harder to find. Now, circling back to the Micah Parsons situation, this could be huge for the Chargers going into 2025. Remember, this past year was all about building that foundation, and they've done exactly that. And interestingly, they made the playoffs. And let's be honest about something in the AFC right now. The way the NFL is structured, you've got some teams that are just struggling. You take advantage of those matchups, handle business in your division, especially against teams like the Raiders, and you're setting yourself up for sustained success. Now, speaking of potential trades, here's another interesting option the Chargers could explore. There's a former first-round guard from the 2022 draft who might be available for pennies on the dollar. The Texans might be looking to move on from Kenyon Green after 2 tough seasons. And look, the numbers aren't pretty. His PFF grades have been at the bottom of the league, but sometimes a change of scenery is exactly what a player needs. With the Chargers' cap flexibility and their need to strengthen that offensive line, this could be one of those low-risk, potentially high-reward moves. Sure, he's had his struggles in Houston, but we've seen plenty of players turn their careers around with a fresh start. The Texans would save about $2.8 million in cap space, and for the Chargers, it could be worth taking a shot, especially considering their needs in the interior offensive line. Another great option for the Chargers offense to consider is Stefon Diggs. He is hitting the free agent market after Houston voided the final years of his contract. This could be huge for LA. Look, we talked about Greg Roman's system and how it doesn't put a huge premium on receivers, but when you've got a chance to get a playmaker like Diggs, you've got to consider it. Here's why this makes sense. Johnson has been up and down, and Palmer's heading to free agency. You've got McConkey, who's shown real promise in 2024, but pairing him with a veteran like Diggs could take this offense to another level. Remember, Herbert is in his prime. This is the time to surround him with weapons. And when we look at the offensive line situation, there's another interesting name that could hit the market. The Bengals might be cutting Alex Kappa to save about $8 million in cap space. Now, his 2024 numbers weren't great. He was ranked 72nd out of 77 guards, but here's the thing. He was playing through injuries. Before that, this guy was consistently solid during his time with the Bucs. For the Chargers, this could be perfect timing. They've already shown they value the trenches. Just look at that alt pick over Neighbors. They've got 2 elite tackles, Bozeman at center, and Zion Johnson's locked in. But that right guard spot, that's where Kappa could come in. They can afford to take a shot on him bouncing back. That's going to wrap it up for this one, but now it's your turn. If you were the Chargers GM, what would you do? Would you push for a blockbuster trade for Micah Parsons, or would you explore other defensive options? Do you think Mason Taylor could be the tight end to transform the Chargers offense, or is there another prospect you've got your eye on? And what about the offensive line? Should the Chargers take a shot at Kenyon Green or Alex Kappa, or focus their resources elsewhere? Let me know what you think about Stefon Diggs potentially landing in LA too. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I can't wait to hear what you all have to say.